Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order the August meeting of the Delaware County Jail Oversight Board. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, republic with which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And joining us remotely today, we have Mr. Raheem King and Ms. Deborah Love. Can you both hear us?
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone.
Deborah, can you hear us? Deborah, you're on.
She's on mute.
Well, hopefully Ms. Love will join us, but it appears that she's on here. And just some housekeeping matters. We did have an executive session yesterday to discuss matters regarding public safety and labor matters as well. With that, we'll move to the next item for today, which is our first round of public comment. So we have, as always, 2 rounds of public comment. The first is for anything that's specific to the agenda today. And then at the end, there are another opportunity that can be about any matters associated with the jail. So if there's anyone who'd like to speak at this time, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, and please give your name and address to start. Is there any public comment at the outset? All right. None. We'll move on to an approval of the minutes for July. Do we have a motion to approve the July minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Controller Phillips. Mr. Corson. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. And a motion to approve the reports from July. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the reports in July.
Thank you, Raheem. Second. Motion and a second. Any questions or comments on the reports? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. All right. We have with us our warden, Ms. Laura Williams, for the warden's report.
Good afternoon, and thank you, members of the board, as well as the public who are joining us here and virtually today. We will start with our monthly statistics. Our current population as of this morning, 1,251 incarcerated persons, which is a decrease of 73 from last month's reported on the date of the meeting. Our weekender program, we had 16 participants in the month of July. 10 of those were first timers and 4 of those were female. In the month of July, we had 570 commitments and 573 discharges. You can see the anomalies to our recreation periods. We've been offering full recreation. It will officially be 1 year on August 16th of 2023 that we've been offering full block recreation throughout the institution. We do always report in those times or instances when we were unable to do that throughout an entire shift. And you can see those for the month of July on the screen. There were no other major incidences to report within the institution. We were able to celebrate a graduation last week on Friday, August 4th. You can see we had 11 correctional officers graduate with class 0623-A. They were sworn in by the Honorable Judge Eckel, who you can see in that top picture in the photograph. She's in the center. We also celebrated and acknowledged the 4 promotions of sergeant. I had previously mentioned those during Jail Oversight Board meetings. They were also sworn in as sergeants, and we had the swearing in of our chief deputy warden. So the larger group, you can see all of us in that bottom right-hand picture. We began the most recent class on July 24th. They're presently within their training period, and our next class is scheduled to begin on August 21st. We have employees of the month this month to acknowledge. These are individuals who are nominated by peers as well as supervisors. A number of these nominees were actually multiple nominations. And interestingly, and I think that it's to their credit, one of the employees that received acknowledgement this month, Stephanie Roberts, who is a drug and alcohol liaison, is an employee who's actually employed by the probation department, is funded through the budget of the Department of Human Services, and resides within our institution. So she's got multiple supervision opportunities, and she was outlined and nominated by several different people for her efforts, particularly in getting an individual who resided in another state into drug and alcohol inpatient treatment. So that certainly was above and beyond the call. Mike Schenk is one of our case managers who's been an employee for over 20 years. And I've recently had the opportunity to engage with New Leash on Life in Philadelphia, and I've met a lot of the staff within the Office of the Public Defender, as well as the District Attorney's Office. And Mike Schenk is not just renowned in Delaware County, but known very well in Philadelphia, and is described as the legend, Mike Schenk. So he was also appropriately acknowledged. And then Jared McCafferty, one of our lieutenants, he had been promoted within the last year and a half from rank of sergeant to lieutenant, and continues to exemplify the values of the institution, and was nominated. Again, this is not the first time he has been listed as one of our supervisors of the month. We wanted to make sure that we also acknowledged a very exciting and also bittersweet retirement of one of our correctional officers, Kenneth Holland, who has long-standing been the eyes and ears of the institution. He's worked in our central control or master control post for the majority, if not all, of his career. And he has served this county for over 41 years of service. And it's important to acknowledge that, because though the facility came under public control on April 6th of 2022, Mr. Holland has survived a multitude of transitions of different leadership. He has been resolute in his duties as a correctional officer, and he has finally decided that he would like to enjoy what exists beyond the walls of George W. Hill Correctional Facility. So we wanted to make sure that we acknowledged the years of service that he's provided to Delaware County under multiple employers.
On behalf of the board, I know we all join you in recognizing Mr. Holland and thanking him for his many years of service to Delaware County. So thank you, Mr. Holland.
Thank you. We are still recruiting for additional employees, especially since we're losing such a valued correctional officer. We do have an in-person job fair that we, as well as other county departments and stakeholders, will be participating in on August 30th. That's at 200 Yale Avenue, Morton, PA 19070. That information is available on most of the county websites and can be referenced if people need to on this video at any given time. We are still seeking a number of different non-security positions as well, which are listed on this screen. Because recruitment is important, I wanted to provide an update with WellPath. So many months ago, the Jail Oversight Board, as well as County Council, supported wage rate adjustments for our contracted healthcare providers to be competitive with the region, as well as acknowledging that those that dedicate their careers to correctional healthcare are a very special type of healthcare provider, and they must be well-rounded in their assessment skills as well as their capabilities in providing clinical care. It has been difficult to recruit for a number of different employees within the landscape, especially post-pandemic. And so those wage rate adjustments have had an immediate outcome and effect. Once advertised, our director of nursing was able to directly recruit and follow up on nurse referrals to successfully onboard 8 PRN staff within the last month. And PRN, also known as per diem, they do not have set schedules. They can work full-time hours. They will work the shifts that are vacant. They get first kind of dibs on those vacant shifts and are able to fill the gaps when we do have full-time vacancies. WellPath also hosted a job fair on July 26th. This was an in-person event. And we were able to extend offers to 4 full-time RN positions, which we have had a number of those positions vacant for the duration of the contract. And seeing those numbers in such a short period of time is such a breath of fresh air. It will allow for some of the staff that has been working diligent overtime to reduce some of those necessary hours to be able to recuperate, as well as onboarding and bringing on additional staff and expertise. We do still have full-time vacancies. Those can be found in WellPath's job site. You will need to search for Thornton, PA as the location. So many people are aware that we bridge 2 different townships on the facility grounds. So Thornton, PA is the location for WellPath jobs, and you can see postings for certified registered nurse practitioners, also referred to as CRNPs. RNs or registered nurses, licensed practical nurses, LPNs, and we are still recruiting for our restoration of competency program. It's important to acknowledge that of the 4 positions, we are only seeking 1 more in order to fill out the restoration of competency program, which will then allow us to begin those services within the institution. We have had additional meetings that WellPath has assisted in managing as project manager for stakeholders within the criminal justice as well as mental health systems. We have included and engaged Norristown, the Office of the Public Defender, as well as the Office of the District Attorney have been absolutely incredible in these discovery meetings to assist in finding the best way to navigate these procedures moving forward. We are very hopeful that we have the process fully outlined, and we will finalize those in procedures that will be memorialized in policy as well as to how we'll navigate this. We're in a little bit of new water, which we've discussed, because we will be the first county jail in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that will be enacting the jail-based restoration of competency.
Well, I don't want to keep interrupting you, but this is pretty big news. As I think we've all heard, the challenges in medical have been real. And the fact that this pretty not insignificant investment by the county and the Jail Oversight Board of over $1 million, and I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was in the 7 figures, to make sure that we could attract like this. The fact that it's paying off is tremendous. And if we can get this restoration of competency program up to be the first in the state of Pennsylvania at a county level, it's going to have truly meaningful impact on some individuals who have been in limbo here. So that's great to hear.
We are looking forward to being able to continue to provide these updates, and also use this as an opportunity to really evaluate kind of every opportunity that we have in terms of the service provision within the facility. When we are able to dedicate the appropriate level of resources, we're then able to fairly evaluate long-term impacts and procedural needs within the institution. So we're greatly appreciative of the support of the Jail Oversight Board as well as County Council to enact such a significant impact in a very short time period.
Great.
Speaking of investment, so I do have some updates related to personnel and employment relations. The members of the Delaware County Prison Employees Independent Union, also known as DCPEIU, and their labor council, represented by Markovitz and Richmond, George W. Hill Correctional Facility administrators, that would include myself and other deputy wardens within the institution, Labor Council, Campbell and Durant, and Delaware County Personnel Labor Relations employees have been participating in negotiation sessions. And though the details of those negotiation sessions are not discussed in a public forum, it's important to acknowledge that those conversations have been ongoing as well as productive. Members of the Jail Oversight Board were afforded the opportunity, and this was done in tandem agreement with DCPEIU representatives, to share a proposed interim agreement. And this endeavors to establish agreed upon terms and conditions for employees or employment and benefits for our correctional officers. The interim agreement will need further review by Delaware County Council, as well as the union body, for an opportunity to vote and ratify for this agreement. One aspect of the interim agreement addresses wage rates and proposes an increase to the starting hourly rate, as well as an increase in base rate of pay for our currently employed correctional officers. And it's important that we at least acknowledge that very publicly because of the budgetary impacts of some of these decisions, should these be supported, voted on, and ratified. Increased wage rates will increase competitive rates with surrounding agencies of comparable size. It will allow for recognition of current employees within the institution. It may, and we hope, as we've seen with WellPath outcomes, increase recruitment opportunities as well as retention. And there will need to be additional considerations related to compression if the proposed rates are implemented. And this would ultimately impact our sergeants, lieutenants, captain classification, fire and safety, and majors that would likely be proposed for wage rate adjustments as well. So again, very important for me to publicly acknowledge that there will be a request that will have a budgetary impact in the facility. If this is ratified, the interim agreement will serve as a binding contract until a comprehensive collective bargaining agreement is established. So.
Yeah, so word procedurally here, it gets a little complicated given the fact that an agreement before it gets ratified needs to be approved by county council as well. But given the timing of our jail oversight board meeting, I do want to make sure, as you alluded to, this body has had the opportunity to review the interim agreement, given the fact that it is an ongoing negotiation, or I should say it's pre-ratified. It would be appropriate to really speak in more detail here. But I do think it's important that this board has the opportunity to express, if there is support to have this proceed further. So with that, I would entertain a motion by a member of the Jail Oversight Board to support the advancement of this interim agreement, subject to ratification and county council approval. Is there such a motion?
I make a motion that we support this interim agreement to be presented for its finality to county council.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Thank you. I think that was Ms. Love.
Yes, it was. I joined late, sorry.
Not a problem, Ms. Love. I hope you have your power back.
Actually, I don't, but thank you for the good wish.
Motion is, questions or comments before we proceed to a vote?
I just have some comments, and I just want to, we've had some discussion today, back and forth in email. And I recommend this process to move this forward to council, subject to the solicitor review, budget review, and comments that I'm sure I'll make to council as I do it in my role as controller. I want to make it clear, I have no objection to the idea that we need to pay a fair wage in this market to retain and recruit people. So I'm supportive of that. I will say that we didn't have a lot of time to review the interim agreement. So I think that I think we all agree, I think in our discussion that we do agree with this process to move forward. And I understand the pressures of negotiations and pulling everyone together from the union and, from the county and our help that we get. So with that, I do have comments that I will pass on, that perhaps there may be some tweaks of some language if possible. But I did it in a pretty accelerated fashion. So with that being said, I don't object to it moving forward, but I think council and budget and solicitor will have to weigh in, and I'm sure they will,
Indeed.
as they consider it.
Thank you, Controller Phillips. Any other comments before we proceed to a vote?
I would just say that while I am supportive of the process, I intend to abstain. That is not reflective that I believe this is either a good or a bad interim agreement. I have read the interim agreement, but I believe, based on my review of the statutory authority of this body, that really this is not something that is appropriate for this body to make a decision on. I believe the decision is solely up to the two entities that will be parties to the action, that is the union and the county council. So I will respectfully abstain.
Thank you, Your Honor. And as someone who, has one foot in each of those bodies between the Jail Oversight Board and County Council, I can tell you that my colleagues on County Council, they do look for the Jail Oversight Board's perspective here. And they realize that the Jail Oversight Board isn't working day in and day out at the jail, but however, they do have a view, a perspective on the impact of such an agreement as it relates to the oversight of the jail that they, as members of County Council, do not have. So my colleagues, would like to hear from the Jail Oversight Board as to whether they support it, understanding the limitations of what each of us have in looking at it. If nothing further, I will put this to a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Please note my abstention for the record.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's been
I
noted.
think I explained my reason for my extension.
You have.
If you require, I'll say something more, but I think I covered it.
I think that's sufficient.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hearing none, we can move on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I just want to acknowledge that Controller Phillips is correct. She also fills dual roles as being the co-chair of the Oversight Board as well as the County Controller. And I think that the intent is to make sure that the mechanism in which all of these are delivered is consistent within the county. So that's why the review period is very important. I wanted to also preview, since we're discussing budget generally, as there will be impacts that were not projected for in the 2023 calendar year, that there is an obligation for a proposal of each director within the county to work within the budget and to present that to the budget director as well as to County Council. And again, because County Council does look for the recommendations as well as the engagement of the Oversight Board during next month's meeting, I will be speaking towards our budget proposal that may include additional title changes for positions as we're restructuring. We are going to be taking on a large volume of capital improvement projects that are going to require us to forecast the needs of the agency and how they will be evolving with some of these projects. So as you can see, I've listed some of them: the kitchen renovation, security systems project, day room renovations, as well as the roof HVAC. So we'll be thinking both in the short term as well as the long term what the organizational needs will be. And I will be making those presentations publicly next month. So because that's such a big deal, I felt it appropriate that a preview be stated during this month's meeting.
Thank you, Warden.
For our goal setting, so I have highlighted some in blue that will not be crossed off this year. Those have been postponed to 2024 as part of the capital improvement projects: the kitchen renovation, the replacement of the roof HVAC system, and enhanced lighting, which is going to be part of those day room procedures. The roof HVAC, I want to make sure that I publicly state that we are continuing to service and manage the systems as they exist. This has required our vendor, Elliott Lewis, to be on site nearly as frequently as our full-time staff is to make repairs to ensure that we're able to address issues. We worked very hard to do quite a bit of preventative testing and maintenance of these units prior to coming into the warmer weather months. But we have had these systems working well beyond their life for quite some time, and that has required a large number of services. So we do look forward to that project starting. And then those that are in the strikeout that are green, those are ones that I'll be providing more of a specific update on this month, that we have either completed or we feel like we've made enough progress towards them that we will not be providing updates each month. Employment and staffing. Nina Chichula, who is a dual certified individual and works within our healthcare department, has provided 3 separate mental health first aid trainings for employees, which is an important skills-based course that allows for de-escalation training and a better understanding of not just pathology, where somebody might have a diagnosis, but the adjustment to incarceration can be stressful, or navigating the criminal justice system may indicate that some of us don't behave or respond or cope in the ways that are the best or the healthiest option. So we have been sending some of our staff who work in these higher risk units, intake units, where somebody might just be having their first incarceration and not really understanding the navigation of such processes, our mental health units, any of our maximum security or restricted housing units. So we are going to continue those efforts with mental health first aid to better equip our staff in the performance of their duties. We have been working very closely with Guardian RFID, which was another initiative supported by the Jail Oversight Board. This is the monitoring technology that will allow our staff to digitally document their tours of duty and other responsibilities that they have through the day that will allow us to increase compliance as well as evaluate our performance measures. We have also received our certification. The radiation certification has come from the DEP, so we will begin utilization of the body scanner tomorrow. So we are working with our criminal justice partners to ensure that we navigate this transitional time period without overburdening their processes while increasing safety measures within the institution. We are very appreciative that the board supported this purchase, making us in line with a lot of other correctional agencies for mitigation measures.
Great news to hear.
Yes.
We're all excited to hear about the body scanner being in operation from the perspective of safety for both our inmates and for the staff. This is great.
We are too. So we will likely be reporting out on some of the lessons learned with the implementation of this technology. Training, and I have the dates incorrect, not just on this slide, but in my calendar. I was reducing the number of days for this professional conference, but the American Correctional Association, which is one of the accrediting bodies that correctional agencies can elect to be accredited by, their conference is being hosted in Philadelphia, and several of our George W. Hill staff members will be in attendance. There are conferences throughout the 10th through the 13th that allow us to learn from other correctional leaders, industry standards, new policies, case law, pretty much everything that applies to the challenges of managing a correctional agency from both the healthcare as well as the maintenance, preventative infrastructure, safety and security measures, and performance of duties. So we will be participating in that conference. We're thankful it's local, so we were able to send additional staff. We've also increased the utilization of Apex virtual reality simulator. So we're putting the money that you guys back to really good use, and wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. So in our most recent week of firearms qualifications, participants were able to participate in several different scenarios within the simulator environment that would mirror something like a hospital detail, as well as practice on the simulated gun range prior to utilizing firearms. So it was an excellent tool, something that we're very excited that we have. This is not something that other correctional agencies have been able to utilize, and our staff is really responding very well to this technology. In terms of facility updates, we will be replacing laundry equipment, which is also well beyond its shelf life. This is being funded through the Public Works Capital Improvement Budget. This was already earmarked for this calendar year. We were just able to finally move forward with the quote process with central purchasing. They've approved the quotes, and that will be placed on the county council agenda for September 6th. And so that will allow us to purchase 4 industrial high efficiency washers, as well as 4 industrial high efficiency dryers for all on-site laundry services. So many people don't think that we are a self-contained city within a city, but we need to be able to perform all of these services on site, and this will allow us to be far more efficient and increase the schedule in which we're able to launder items within the institution. Additionally, and I won't spend a lot of time on this because Deputy Fowley will speak towards the increased services for youthful offenders. The 2 that he won't mention are Project Success, which was a 6-week course that started in February and ended in March. And that was raising awareness for substance use, teaching skills for risky behaviors, and assisting with coping mechanism, decreasing some of the impulsivity and increasing some of the logical thought processes. as well as life skills transitions, another 6-week course that began when that first one concluded in March and that ended in April. This assists in the navigation of transitional needs to adulthood, which I think many of us could have benefited from when we were in our adolescence. Also, increasing psychoeducation. We have been doing the 6-week program Into Work with Aramark. They are graduating, I think, in 1 week. So we will be reporting next month about that experience. I'm certain we'll have some photographs to acknowledge the accomplishments of the individuals who participated in the inaugural class of Into Work, gaining their ServSafe certification. We have also started a fatherhood program. Deputy Falley had spoke about this last month. It's a 6-module program, 6 one-hour sessions that include topics such as managing your emotions, being a man and a dad, and family origin and co-parenting. And their graduation for the inaugural class will also be this month. In terms of programs and services, we have increased partnerships with local universities and recently signed memorandums of understanding and interagency agreements with Westchester University, as well as Newman University for increased internship programs. And we will be embedding additional interns within the institution to help teach them different aspects of the criminal justice system. Many people think about the criminal justice system for what exists within the community, but not necessarily what exists within the institution and the reintegration to the community. So we are very thankful that we have a list of interested partners wanting to support that education process. We've also increased community engagement and stakeholders specific to reentry and reintegration. So the jail serves as one of the entities within the CJAB, which is the Criminal Justice Advisory Board that is chaired by Judge Capuzzi. And we have been working on a grant that was funded, procured through CJAB with the Public Health Management Corporation, specifically for reentry support. And we have been within the requirements period with PHMC. We've engaged in a number of meetings and we look forward to those supports being made available. That will be a voluntary program and it will be open to nearly every individual who is reentering as long as they are a resident of this county. The Office of the Public Defender, to their credit, whether they want me to shout them out or not, they have been increasing their physical presence in the institution. So if there is a barrier or a challenge with one of the individuals, their clients that they represent, getting to court, understanding legal process, particularly those that have severe mental illness, the Public Defender's Office has been willing to come into the institution and go to these special management units to have meetings with their clients. And we're affording the opportunity to ensure that there is still attorney-client privilege, but it is extraordinarily important that they have access to their clients and that we find mechanisms to do this. But this has been something that their office has championed, and we truly could not do it without their engagement and support. Additionally, we've had probation hosted a meeting and they invited our case managers, which we greatly appreciated because of the amount of communication and overlap. My understanding is when everybody got in the same room with each other, there were applause. People were able to finally see who was at the other end of the email or the phone call, and they were able to talk about different ways that they can support and collaborate on incarcerated individuals who are presently in custody on technical violations, for example, to support their reintegration into the community. So I think that that was an extraordinarily beneficial meeting. It's nice to be able to revisit in person and be able to make those strengthened partnerships. And then lastly, there was another meeting with reentry for probation, diagnostic services, human services, and George W. Hill staff related to a lot of the different reentry partnerships going on. And we will have additional ones on board in the future. New Leash on Life, we've engaged with multiple times, as well as the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society and Temple University. So there will be additional programs upcoming in the new calendar year. Go ahead.
There's a lot in there. Any questions or comments from board members? All right.
Thank you. We're making progress on some of our goals. Medications for opioid use disorder. So though we are still tweaking the way that we track these numbers to make sure they're accurate, we wanted to make sure that we reported these numbers out. So this is different than what we've done in the past. And you can see the far right column is the total number of persons within the calendar year that we have begun these initiatives. And just to recollect for all of us, in May of 2023, that's when we expanded for continuation of all medications for opioid use disorder. When somebody comes into our institution and they're on a verified program, we will support that medication and treatment continuing. And so we've broken it down. And the reason for doing so is that a lot of agencies will continue individuals who are pregnant, but not those that are otherwise coming into an institution on a verified program. So we have broken this down into the categories of male, female, pregnant. You can see those that were continued on methadone, those that were continued on Subutex or Suboxone. It's a form of Suboxone. Those that were inducted to Subutex, and that means that they were not on a verified program when they came into the institution, but they met clinical eligibility criteria, and it was believed that this was a life-sustaining medication and would reduce their risk of fatal overdose. So you can see that we are inducting individuals to buprenorphine within the agency. Continued on Sublocade, which is the long-term acting injectable form of buprenorphine, inducted, continued on Vivitrol, as well as inducted to Vivitrol. And so we will be reporting out these each month, and we anticipate that they will ebb and flow, but that as this continues to be a more well-rounded program, our numbers will likely continue to expand.
Warden, could we just pause here for a moment? So buprenorphine, what's the big spike that happened in June with regard to continuation? Is that attributed to anything in particular, or why did that sort of go up by 3 times?
Sorry, I was looking at that again. So this is not necessarily something that we control. For whatever reason, the individuals coming into the institution that were on a verified program was just 3 times the amount than we had seen the month before. So that's usually indicative of individuals are connected and they have less access to care issues in the community. So they're coming in on this prescribed treatment, and we are continuing it.
And just the other question I had, and I'm sure that there might be other members of the board that have questions, but with regard to sort of handing off to community treatment after their time at George W. Hill is over, can you speak a little bit about what we're doing there to ensure that there's a continuation of treatment?
Absolutely. So within WellPath, one of their staff individuals is their title is a discharge planner. And individuals who are engaged in any of our medication for opioid use disorder programs prior to their release, as long as we do have some planned awareness that this is going to happen. So the anomalies or exceptions could be somebody's bond or bail is posted, and we are legally obligated to release them. So the handoff is not going to be very strong for that individual. If it's happening during business hours, we're going to be able to handle it. But if it is outside of business hours, that individual will be expected to go to their home clinic or provider that they were seeing within the community. One of the nice things that has happened is that the DEA used to have an X waiver that prescribers had to go through additional training and apply for this waiver for their license to be able to prescribe buprenorphine. That waiver has been waived. So you do not have to have a special waiver in order to continue this treatment within the community. So somebody who is prescribed this within our institution, and I'm speaking, this is buprenorphine, they can go to a community provider and have that continued. We are able to, with a signed release of information, communicate with any healthcare provider in the community of the dosage, the last date that they received their medication, and we're also providing prescriptions upon release to make sure that they can continue in the interim before they get re-engaged to their care. Ideally, though, we do have some advance notice about somebody leaving our facility. And that way, if they don't have an established care provider, we can assist them in finding one that's in their local community. And if they did already have an established care provider, we can let them know that they've continued, if there have been any changes to their dosage of the medication, what those were, and get those records to the community provider in advance. I hope that answered your question.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think this chart is really helpful as you evolve the reporting on this, because it's just really clear to understand who's coming in, you're continuing. So I just want to say thanks for that.
Thank you. I thrive with feedback because it helps me know what works and what doesn't, and then we can adjust. Thank you.
Board and looking at these numbers, I mean, 166 people, I mean, that's, astounding to see that from, zero when this initiative started. Any barriers that have been identified, any additional support that's needed? What is the feedback? Anything that you can share with the board?
In terms of barriers, I think that a limitation in general is sometimes that individuals don't always have the same access in the community, oddly, that they may have when they come into incarceration, which I don't want to say it sounds backwards, but that sounds a bit backwards. So we do need to make very collaborative decisions in terms of treatment with the incarcerated individual to make sure that this is a treatment program that is consistent with what they are seeking in their recovery process, and that they will be able to sustain this when they reintegrate into the community. So I say that because some of the medications require different levels of investment. And that's an important thing to evaluate when you're discussing that with the individual. So this is not intended to say that one is better than the other, because any treatment can work, and these are well-researched, efficacious forms of treatment. But methadone, until you have increased your level of privilege within a methadone clinic, requires you to go to the dosing site 7 days a week, and that includes weekends and holidays. And that can be a barrier for some individuals who might have limited transportation opportunities. Sublocade, which is a long-acting injectable, is an extraordinarily expensive medication. And if somebody does not have health insurance that covers that, that would then also become a barrier. So you can see we have continued Sublocade. We have not necessarily inducted people to Sublocade. We can and we will. That does require that they do an oral challenge of buprenorphine. So they would take an oral medication before the long-acting injectable. But there still are barriers within the community as well as in the criminal justice system. So some individuals might have legal circumstances that would prohibit or preclude them from being engaged, depending on what level of supervision they might be in, or the circumstances of their legal case to begin with. The only other thing, and I can say, and this is not because you're on the board, but we do get a lot of outreach from community organizations, which has been very welcomed. And MVP has been the most recent one of, hey, we're seeing some changes in the community. Can we revisit and get together and figure out the best path forward? So I would say to any of the community providers that might be listening to this or aware that we are expanding our medications for opioid use disorder treatment, we would appreciate the outreach to find better ways to partner if those exist, because it's important that individuals are able to continue their treatment.
And just one additional question, just with the expanded medication treatment, has Vivitrol, is it an option for anyone coming in with alcohol dependence?
It is.
Oh, great.
So Vivitrol, which is most frequently utilized for opioids, has, and also naltrexone, which is the oral version. It is indicated for individuals with alcohol use disorder, especially profound alcohol use disorder. And so it assists with reducing cravings, which can be extraordinarily important. It's not like Antabuse. Sometimes people think about that, which was an older medication that I don't even know if it's used anymore, but was a very aversive conditioning. If you drank while you took Antabuse, you would get sick. So this is very different. And we can and do use it. We just, again, can't force anybody to treatment. So they need to be open, and they need to have the opportunity to evaluate risks and benefits. The other challenge with naltrexone or Vivitrol is that you do have to check blood levels, particularly liver function. And there are some levels that it would not be indicated safe to actually start that medication treatment.
Right. No, great job. Thank you.
Warden, sorry, one other quick point of clarification. Is each number on here a distinct individual, or if someone, for example, gets, continued in April and is in the facility for the next 4 months, do they show up in April, May, June, and July?
No, these are those that would be continued or inducted within that calendar month. So we actually have, I think it's over 70, close to 80 persons engaged in some form of medication-assisted treatment in our current population today. But these are only to reflect, because we didn't want to have duplicate numbers that can sometimes drive data up. So these are only persons that are newly committed to our institution and continued, or those that are inducted within that calendar month. Visitation update. This is one that's also very exciting to us. So pre-pandemic, there were visitation hours, and then the pandemic shut a lot of things down, and one of those being visitation. And our facility was one that continued visitation almost throughout the entirety of the pandemic to allow for in-person. And the reason for that was there was an investment by the county through CARES Act funding to install, similar to what we have in this room right now, which is the glass barriers. Now, the Jail Oversight Board supported the opportunity to add in speakers so that we could speak without having to raise voices and compete with other conversations. That work was started, I believe, on the 24th and completed on the 26th of July. So that was step one. We've also been working with ViaPath, who assists with our scheduling of visits for in-person. And so we are going to be expanding the current 30-minute time period to 1 hour long sessions. We're also offering multiple different days and times during the week so that we might be able to capture, if somebody always works a Tuesday evening, but they don't work a Thursday morning, they might be able to come and visit their family member during that designated time period. We're still evaluating that final schedule and what that will look like. Presently, if you Google George W. Hill Correctional Facility, in the top right corner, you can see the visitation icon. That's one of the icons that you would click on, the read more, and you would navigate that page to see the schedule as it presently exists today. That's where we will be putting the modification for the schedule. That's also the same site that you can go to schedule your in-person visit. So we will be making the modifications to our policies, procedures, complete retraining, increase the scheduling capacity within that program. It's a web-based system, and begin these extended hours of visitation on Monday, September 11th. So we wanted to make sure that the public had advance notice that we will be offering this. I know it has come at a request of multiple incarcerated persons as well as their families. We do appreciate people understanding that we can't enact immediate change, that oftentimes take necessary preparation and planning, and that we are committed to moving forward and making progress once we've checked all of those boxes. So we'll be looking forward to the new posted schedule that will allow for visitation hours to be extended.
Well, this is, again, great news. I know a lot of these programs, these projects have been, months, in some cases years in the works, and it's great to see that a lot of them are coming to fruition. I think incarceration doesn't need to and shouldn't mean being cut off completely from your friends and family and loved ones. And when we think about successful reentry, having that continuation of connection is important. So great to see this.
Well, and it's particularly nice because we've been able to offer, until we've been able to expand the video or the in-person visit timeframes, we've been able to offer the video or the in-person visits for 30 minutes. So at least it's something. And we've done on block housing unit video visitation, which has just exploded in the connectivity with family. So this is another additional step. All of those other efforts and initiatives will get to continue. This will be in addition to.
Excellent.
Cost recovery. So again, we provide these numbers each month just to ensure that this information is known. Those top 4 lines or rows go to the county general fund. Whereas the vending commissions directly contribute to the inmate welfare fund, as well as individuals who leave with less than $1 on their account, that does contribute to the inmate welfare fund. And we are at $3,761,400.55.
And as I think we've said a couple times, that is a large number, and this is the inmates' money. It's not the county's. So I'd welcome ongoing efforts to sort of be creative about how best to put that to good use.
And so I want the board to ensure that they're aware, we are in the evaluation time period to support programs, initiatives, and access resources within the institution. We fully intend to present, hopefully well thought out and articulated proposals to utilize some of those funds. I think it's worth repeating too, that the commission rate was voted on by the Oversight Board to reduce, which reduced the burden of cost on family as well as the incarcerated individual. So we will be contributing at a lower percentage, but we still have a large volume of funds to work with to directly benefit the population. And that's what those funds are exclusively for. Before I turn it over to Deputy Falley, are there any additional questions I might be able to answer?
Anything from board members? All right. Thank you, Warden.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I'd like to bring up Deputy Falley.
Thank you, Warden William. Good evening, board members and members in the public and online. I'm going to touch base as we emailed you guys the program report, but I'm not going to go too much into detail. I'm going to cover two different components. The first one is about the education workforce highlight. At Dojo here, we had 42 IPs that earned their GD as of August 1st of 2023. Last year, we had 49. Just want to give you a couple of facts. Nationally, statistically, only 48% of all GD test takers pass that GD for the first time. 75% of individuals who do not pass are usually discouraged. On a national level, state correctional facility average 65 to 72% passing rate, and counties usually do between 50 and 60. At George W. Hill, the passing rate is at 65%. This is very amazing. Thank you, Ms. Krusky and her team, Ms. Kaspar and Ms. Gilmartin for your hard work and dedication. Georgia, we also invest in workforce development. This month, we have 29 individuals are trained in flagger certification in accordance to the Penn DOT guidelines for flagging on the roadways. And then 60 individuals received 32 certification in different type of Spartan chemical for cleaning, such as bloodborne pathogens and standards in the industry. I'm going to spend some time on our youthful offenders, without youthful offenders. In partnership with Child and Family Focus Organization, we offered two previous programs that Warden covered earlier. In the month of August, currently we're facilitating a 10-week course called Left Skill High School. This is our third during this year. The program focuses on a healthy relationship building, emotion and family communication, media awareness, and values of good health. This will be our third youthful offender program this year, on top of the wellness and physical activity that the education class they receive on a weekly basis. I want to thank Ms. Shaw, who during this year has really partnered with Child Family Focus Organization. Delaware County Intermediate Unit, DCIU, will be resuming in-person instruction on Monday, between Monday and Friday, 4 o'clock during our new academic year. Thank you, Mr. Robert Matt and Robert Gallup from the DCU for your continued support to George W. Hill. Other service for our youthful offender includes the opportunity for recreation in our gym. Thank you, Ms. Shaw, for bringing it there, and Mr. Whitfield, with access to all the equipment. Mindful exercise with Ms. Stacy Mandel. Thank you for partnership with us. Individual counselor with Mr. Paul Dickinson, who's our mental health clinician. We'll be installing a pull-up bar in this coming week in our, right next to the basketball court. A couple of religious services updates. I would like to welcome Hope Worldwide Philadelphia chapter, which is a Protestant faith organization, and they will be providing services the third Tuesday of each month. This agency as well is also willing to provide services to our youthful offender pending on the Act 33 clearance. Starting August 12th, Bethesda Community Church will join our faith-based organization with Protestant service on Wednesdays. And Sacrament of Recreation will start every third Thursday of each month, starting August 17th. Thank you, St. Thomas of Our Post Catholic Church, and which also provide us masses on the fourth Tuesdays of each month. I would like to give a couple of educational information for the public. Our facility remains open to a variety of faith-based organizations. These organizations will provide spiritual, religious counseling congruent to their religious observation. We have organizations that represent Christian, Catholic, Muslim, Jewish, and whatever faith they represent. The general population is entitled to congregate setting, which means mixed population. Our special management housing, for example, restricted housing, intake housing, protected custody, receive religious services via facility chaplain and/or clerkly visit. Additionally, accommodation are provided to our incarcerated person upon their request. All details are outlined within the incarcerated person handbook. This year, we completed 11 clerkly visit requests. I'm going to show, and this is our calendar. I did put the housing unit for security reason, but it's pretty full, and we always welcome new service provider to partner with us. Any questions from the board?
Any board member questions for Deputy Warden Fowley? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other deputy warden reports for today? All right, we will move on to any new business from board members.
I just had two things. One was, I'm wondering if the restoration to competency program, which I know is underway, but I'm wondering if we could maybe loop back with council or to Mr. Woolley and people where, with respect to our legislators, and if they are making pitches at the state level to help fund this, because it's great that we're the model. And, but I think Councilwoman Ruther spoke pretty well at the meeting that this really should be something that the state takes on, because, and if this model works in our institution, then maybe it will be a great model across the Commonwealth, but it really is a state obligation to help us. So if we could get an update, or maybe just reach out to council people. I know you have more contact with legislators. So if we could maybe put that for the future to maybe see if there's some movement there or help there or a report.
Absolutely. As you point out, I mean, this is really a state level responsibility. But as we were seeing, when there's only 2 facilities across the state of Pennsylvania that 67 counties are leveraging, it wasn't working out. So I do hope that putting up this pilot program, it can be a galvanizing force for the state to really pick up
And
the
it could
slack.
be a model for the state to follow, but it would follow that it would be state funded as well. So I think we could just keep that on our focus. And then the other question I just had is, if there could be a consideration or a report, is there any ability for us to use the opioid settlement funding at George W. Hill? I just don't know what the capabilities are. I know that's underway, and there's a lot of work being done on it, but
There most
it would be
definitely will.
good to know if the board, we could understand if that's a capability.
So we're engaged in the stakeholder conversations for the proposal of funds. There have been some targeted efforts in which some of those monies have been allocated and released. There is a committee that completes evaluation and scoring to make determinations as to where some of those funding dollars can go to. And we have certainly put our name in the hat for consideration, and we will continue to press forward for funding opportunities.
And just on that point, Controller Phillips, there are studies that say that individuals are as much as 40 times more likely to overdose in I think it's either 3 or 6 week window post release from incarceration. And so, I think that really supports the case as to why, while there are a lot of different programs that the county can be investing these funds in, I do think that there's a really strong case for why the jail is an important place to really be intersecting.
Yeah, and I attended a Pennsylvania Controllers Conference, and I will tell you, across the Commonwealth, the controllers are recognizing that our jails, the same topics we discussed today, 1/3 mental health, 1/3 addiction issues, and then 1/3 other. And everybody's facing that. So if we can be the model for the Commonwealth in any of these fields, I mean, we are ahead on that. And it's noted across the Commonwealth, as you well know too, but the controllers, many who sit on, they don't have jail oversight boards, but they have prison boards. They're all recognizing that.
Thank you, Controller.
If I just say, in addition to you, Warden Williams, I know Judge Capuzzi is very knowledgeable about that area. In fact, he just presented a program about the opioid settlement to the entire judiciary of the state of Pennsylvania about 2 weeks ago. So I'm sure he would be very interested in helping in any way, and I know you've probably been in touch with him already.
I appreciate the acknowledgement for Judge Capuzzi. Both you and I have said his name during this meeting, but many people are not aware how active our judges are in Delaware County for a lot of these initiatives in order to garner support. So Judge Amoroso recently worked with a number of different reentry organizations on a particular case, and she was not here today, but she too should be noted as somebody who's been going above and beyond for criminal justice work within Delaware County.
All right, any other new business from board members? Hearing none, we'll move over to our second and final round of public comment. If there are any members of the public who would like to speak, please do so. And again, please keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. There's a timer up on the screen there. And please start with your name and address.
Thank you. I'm Robert Ciccanelli, 6 East Marthard Avenue in Havertown, representing the Delco Coalition for Prison Reform. And today we present you with our proposal for protection without restriction. The population of our jail is not homogeneous. Beyond the male and female split, we house people across a wide range of ages, of all ethnic backgrounds, of diverse sexual identities, and with criminal charges of every nature. While the individualized classification process can and should take all of these factors into account, the jail has not moved forward to create more specialized housing units. We currently have separate housing for females as a group, adolescents because we're required by law, and a protective unit for adult males with a variety of concerns. These housing units were inherited from Geo Group, which leads us to the obvious conclusion that, like everything else, they were the bare minimum and were aimed at making their job easier and their bottom line more profitable. 16 months later, we should be moving beyond this basic paradigm. While efficiency and ease of management are worthwhile, the overarching goal must be to care for our residents, and this care must result in equity among the residents. Lately, we've seen extensive national media coverage of just how our criminal justice systems can be kind, flexible, and humane. When individual protection is attained by their restriction, we are punishing people for who they are rather than for what they have done. Restriction or the removal of privileges is a disciplinary action which should only be triggered by misconduct. Punishment, even when it's coincidental, should never occur due to a person's status. In fact, our Supreme Court said as much as far back as 1962, holding the punishment for status offends the Eighth Amendment protections. While my parallel is not complete, the practice of protection through restriction creates serious inequity, which certainly brushes close to the broader concerns of cruel and unusual punishment. In making these recommendations today, Delco CPR does not presume to detail how these things would be done, and we do appreciate the financial and other resources which would be needed. We do believe, however, that these are reasonable ideas backed by research, practices that are in use elsewhere, or just common sense. And while they may appear simple to many, those with a working knowledge of life inside a jail can readily attest to the value of each idea that we have presented to you today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to say, we really do appreciate the thoughtful proposal that CPR has put forth. We value having an independent and active body like CPR that helps us to move things forward as best we can. So thank you for bringing this forward. Anything else from the public today? Hearing none, we move back to any last board member comments? Anything from board members? Anything further? Further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
In a second, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.